Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. This is my monthly compendium of case reports between the 9th to the 28th of December, 2020. Case files 1 through 16. Tonight's first case file, written by user Nicola90, details how objects in his home are vanishing inexplicably. Let's get right into it. Case file number 1. Let me start by saying there's no other person more skeptical or cynical than me, to the point of irritating everyone by questioning everything with logic. But just recently, things have been disappearing from our house at an increasingly alarming rate. Now, the obvious answers are absent-mindedly misplaced, theft, or prank. These are a range of items from clothing, jewelry, books, pills, and a host of miscellaneous mundane items. None have ever reappeared despite the most thorough of searches. Now, I accept that some of these have just been naturally lost, taken out of the house and left somewhere. I can definitely rule out the theft or prank. Despite the upsetting nature of the consequences of some of these losses, like everyone else, in the end you put it down to one of those things and move on because there's nothing more you can do about it. That is, until this morning and this happened. It is all more weird because the object involved is so mundane. My son recently broke off the bottom cover of his PS5 and I promised to fix it. So this morning I actually got around to planning to repair it. I decided to take it from his bedroom down to the kitchen because the lighting is so much better down there. I placed the cover on top of the PS5 and carefully carried them both down the stairs to the kitchen. I put the PS5 on the kitchen table, went to take the cover off the top of the PS5 so I could flip it over to fix it on the underside, and it had just vanished. I just thought, how the hell did that slip off without me noticing, or hearing it? But just went back up to the stairs to find it. It could only have been between the bedroom and the kitchen, a fairly short distance, mind you. Now let me just tell you, I've spent the better part of an hour searching for it, and it's gone. Just completely vanished. I am alone in the house and there are no pets here, so between me placing the cover on top of the PS5 and setting it down on the table was about a minute. Obviously I didn't see it disappear, and I was concentrating on not falling down the stairs whilst carrying a PS5. But I can say, without a shred of doubt, that the cover has vanished into thin air. Of that there is simply no doubt. I am now questioning all other disappearances of more valuable and larger items that have happened recently, and at an increasing rate. Having Googled this phenomena, I had no idea it's occurring all over the world, and also at an increasing rate, it seems. The problem is that it's all too easy and natural to dismiss a missing item as just lost, hidden, or stolen, and write it off as just that because there's no other explanation, is there? Edit. Sorry guys, I've just been corrected by my daughter that it's a PS4, not a PS5. Just to clarify, sorry for the confusion. Personal notes. Well, as you described, we all do have objects that seem to just vanish. But usually those instances occur where there's some sort of logical assumption. I mean, something that can be made in your mind that says, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like you say, theft or a prank or something. Or like it just bounced off when you dropped it and then you can't find where it bounced to. Something like that. You just assume, oh, well, it bounced like 30 feet. Who knows? Maybe the laws of physics were temporarily disabled. For this specific case, there doesn't seem to be any actual explanation at all. You also mentioned you don't have pets, so it's not like you had a dog that just snuck it around and hid it somewhere. So in humor, I like to think that some people actually do have the superpower of invisibility, and spend their days pranking us by moving or stealing objects right under our noses. It's probably what I'd do if I had that kind of power. Oh, I've said too much. Tonight's second case, written by user Critical Cranberry, describes an unusual noise that emanated from an unknown location, with the feeling of being lured in. Case file number 2. This happened about 4 years ago. I just remembered it today and realized I still don't know how to explain it. I worked a swing shift and it was 11 p.m. to midnight when I got home. My dog was in the backyard. I went inside and took off my shoes right away, getting ready to take a shower. However, my dog started barking frantically. This was common for him as he was protective. I would check if there was actually a problem every time, just in case. I went out on the deck in the backyard. He was barking at the bottom of the stairs facing away from me, which was unusual for him to do. I started talking and he stopped barking immediately. Then I heard a very loud, heavy breathing. I thought it was my dog panting, but he was not. The sound seemed to come from above me, and he was standing below me. It sounded like someone hyperventilating, like they were trying to breathe as loudly as possible. I couldn't see anything out of the ordinary though. Well, I decided to investigate. I went down the stairs and examined my yard and the next door neighbors. This was a suburban area. When I got near where I heard the breathing, I suddenly heard the sound from a yard away. Once I got to that yard, the sound jumped to the next yard. Being young and dumb, I continued down the street. Every time I got close, the sound would jump. It always sounded the same. It was the same loudness and pitch, always the same distance away, it seems. I continued down the road until I reached a bend. My feet hurt, so I stopped for a minute. I realized that due to the curve, I could not see the place where I heard the sound, but it seemed to be just within the edges of a wooded area. I was seriously considering chasing after it when it occurred to me how foolish it was to be investigating alone like that, and especially without shoes. My phone was also dead. I suddenly got the impression that I was a prey animal, and some kind of predator was trying to lure me farther away. I immediately turned around and walked back as quickly as possible. Probably it was just anxiety from being alone in the dark, but I couldn't stop thinking that something terrible would have happened if I went any further. I never heard that sound again or had any weird experiences like that, and I no longer live in that area. The best mundane answer I have is that it was some kind of bird. What is most creepy to me is I have since read stories of people following a noise and then had a feeling of something luring them into the woods. I know a lot of these stories are probably not true or have simple explanations. If anyone does have suggestions for what I heard, I would love to hear them. This was in the US, in the Midwest. Personal notes. So as I was reading this, I was thinking of those horror movies. As you're watching them, shouting at the screen, "Don't go through the door, don't do it. God no, just run away, call for help, stay together, don't split up." All of the above. Well, at least you did turn back around and never found out what it was. Could have been some unknown beast. Maybe even a killer luring you with a strange sound. Or perhaps it was some kind of auditory glitch without any evil involved. There certainly are a lot of audio glitches in the world, the hum being the most renowned. Still, that it never happened again does suggest that it probably was some kind of animal, though quite intelligent. Interesting. Case file number 3, written by user Harmonious Lightbeam, is related to butter. Evidently, a stick of it appeared from nowhere at all. Case file number 3. Guys, help me out here. Something happened yesterday and it's really bothering me because there doesn't seem to be any rational explanation or reason for it. Yesterday, I arrived home with my arms full of stuff from my car. I make my way to the kitchen area, dump everything on the kitchen table, turn the light on, glance in. Everything is normal, and turn around to start grabbing stuff to put away. When I turn back around, my dog is going at a large brick of butter right near the fridge, and this is where it gets weird. For one thing, when I looked in the kitchen, there was nothing amiss at all. I also don't know if the dog is part of this glitch or just the butter, and then she saw it and ran in to take advantage of this situation. For another, there was no wrapper on or near the butter, which, if it had fallen from the fridge, that's not how I would have stored it. Another, when I went to put the butter in the trash, When I picked it up, it was soft, not hard like it should have been if it had fallen from the fridge. Until this point, I had fully convinced myself that I myself, despite not being hungry or thirsty and not having a need to open the fridge, had opened it anyway and just not noticed this butter had fallen out. Or maybe before I'd left, I'd done it and this is why it was soft. But even at this, I was still slightly incredulous. But it was still a somewhat acceptable explanation. Until I really did open the fridge to find that there was no butter missing at all. The butter I thought was on the floor was in the door, in its wrapper, right where it was supposed to be. I had used the other half last week to make chocolate chip cookies, and there were another 2 sticks in a box in the drawer too. No missing butter. So this is where I start kinda wigging out. Where the hell did this butter come from? I'm kinda mad actually that I can't figure it out. I feel like this stuff is happening to me more frequently. There was another instance a few months back in which a guy fully disappeared, and that doesn't make sense either. But this is just straining the limits of what I find myself able to explain away. I'm either leveling up or losing my damn mind. I don't know what I'm looking for here, but if you could either find an explanation I can swallow or tell me something similar happened to you, or even some alternate reality explanation. I mean, anything at this point would help, because I feel like I'm losing it. Thanks in advance. Personal notes. Yeah, so a while back there was another case file about salmon just appearing in someone's fridge when it wasn't possible or made any sense for it to have been there. And now it's butter falling down from the fridge, apparently. Well, we know at this point, at least I believe so, that people can cross over between alternate realities. That's common. Usually the catalyst is death, which is a bit morbid. But not really, because we live on in other forms of ourselves from those other realities. But there are instances also of people just crossing over, usually temporarily, even though they didn't die. So if their entire bodies can cross over, why couldn't physical objects? Really, to me, it doesn't seem like a stretch all that much. What bothers me is not having any clear explanation as to how this is happening, or what triggers it to begin with. It just seems random. Some people just glimpse over, not even crossing. Others physically cross over without dying, and then some people have objects seemingly fall into the reality. Or perhaps ours are lost. Could explain case file number 1. Case file number 4. Written by user Conscious Diver 77. Features a case of seemingly instantaneous regeneration. I regard this experience as very surreal. Even thinking about it today seems unreal. I was totally sober and don't do drugs. Even more crazy how I experienced such an undeniable reality shift with clear witnesses. I was over at my parents' house helping my father rescreen all the windows in the house. A lengthy process that involves removing the old screen material, measuring out the new material from a large roll, putting the screen material in the frame, then cutting off all excess screen material. It was during this process of cutting off the excess screen material that suddenly the X-Acto knife slipped and sliced my thumb open, about an inch long with a clear red line visible. I clearly saw this. My father, standing right beside me, clearly saw it too. My mother saw it as well, but was further away. Upon seeing this, my father exclaimed, "Are you okay?" And immediately, for some reason, I quickly shrugged it off saying, "Oh, it's nothing." After a few seconds, my senses kicked in and figured I should go get a band-aid as to not get blood onto the new screen material. I go to check my thumb, and nothing. There's no cut, there's no line, no redness, nothing. I squeezed my thumb thinking that maybe it would show up under pressure. Completely smooth, unbroken skin. "You saw that, right? You saw me slice my thumb?" I asked. "Yeah," my father said. "Well, it's gone, look," I said as I held up my thumb. Needless to say, both me and my father were puzzled. Stupidly, I checked the other thumb thinking that maybe I somehow confused which one I'd sliced open. But of course, I knew it wasn't the other thumb, which of course was normal. Immediately, a strange sensation washed over me, Sort of like that sense of violation you sense when you get the feeling of being watched. Like I had witnessed something I wasn't supposed to. I also experienced a strange sense of disconnection, like the present moment felt just very surreal. Personal notes. When you sliced open your thumb, did you feel it happen? I know X-Acto knives are extremely sharp, but you'd still feel it happening, right? Not one of those instances where you cut yourself without even realizing it until much later. I saw a comment on here how the body can heal perfect cuts extremely quickly from a registered nurse. But my problem with that is there'd still be evidence that a slice happened via the blood. Per your description, there was absolutely nothing on your thumb. No evidence of a cut, no blood whatsoever, no scarring, no even like slightly raised edges that would indicate that it healed. It doesn't seem likely that it would heal so rapidly and in such a way that there would be absolutely no evidence. I mean, there should be at least some little speck of blood or something. This was my comment, and the author responded succinctly, "Yes, I felt it. Yes, I distinctly saw the red open wound line it created. Afterwards, it was completely smooth, unbroken skin. There just was no line, no anything at all, even when under pressure. Not even a hint of it." Continuing my thoughts, well yeah, that's just crazy. I do accept the notion that wounds that are extremely clean can heal rapidly, but not in a few seconds to such a perfect level. That doesn't make sense to me. Maybe it is the case, I don't know. And all the more important that you had many witnesses that saw it too. What did your dad think? Case file number 5, written by user AbsentDreamer1, is an experience of what is presumed to be either a demon or spirit wreaking havoc in someone's home during the day. Freak weather is reported. So this is my first post in Reddit. This subreddit showed up today a few hours ago, and I carefully read the rules, and I thought this is the right place to tell a story I have that I always tell to my friends or people who deny all these encounters or beings' existence. If I recall, this happened about 4 or 5 years ago, when I was around 16 or 17, more or less. I've always been a skeptical person, and I usually try to prove things by the scientific method. For example, when I was very little, we had a cat, and I pushed her one day from a very high distance to see if it was true that cats always land on their feet. She landed perfectly, by the way. I'm sorry I did it. And I know this has nothing to do with the actual story, but I find it very relevant, because it explains my initial behavior in the really weird parts of the story. So now to the actual story. This happened in Spain, where I live, and I think it was the end of summer, more or less. I went visiting a friend in town where we both live, and it was a really good day. Sunny, but surprisingly not hot enough so I could wear large pants, which I love. We were hanging out like we usually did at that time, talking about whatever in her room. It was the most normal and chill day that we could possibly enjoy. So she and her mom were the only ones living in the house that summer, and while we were talking, her mom told us that she was going to buy groceries for the next week, so she closed everything in the first floor, windows and doors, and now we're alone in the house. We kept talking about our stuff, when suddenly it starts getting really windy, and the windows in the second floor were all open because it was summer. So we run to close all the windows so nothing gets thrown around and all that. Then just one window is left, and my friend asks me if I can close it for her, because it's in the guest bedroom and she's afraid to go in because she believes it's haunted. So I don't believe in this, and I just went inside and closed it without thinking too much. Then we returned to her bedroom. I ask her why she thinks it's haunted, and she begins to tell me that she and her mother sometimes see a shadow that looks similar to a man's, completely still, facing towards them between the curtains. She also told me that her mother thought it had to be a ghost because when she sleeps, she wakes up and can't move, and then the shadow man would be in her room looking at her from her feet. We probably didn't realize at the time that her mother was just having sleep paralysis episodes. After telling me all this, she starts to get really nervous and feeling unsafe, so since I just want to hang out with her, I offer myself to get up and close the door so she feels better. I close it in a way to make sure that it's not going to open again unless force is applied. I put some kind of weight in front of it on our side, on the floor. Then I look outside through our window and suddenly realize there's a damn storm outside. Like in an instant, with bolts and everything. High winds. I get a little worried because that might slow me when I have to walk home later. My friend, who is also weirded out by the sudden change of weather, decides that she wants to keep talking about this ghost in the guest's bedroom. She explains again that she believes it's real, but guesses it's something else and calls it a demon. And right at this moment when she uses that word, things start to get serious. Thunder starts to sound very loud outside, which alerts us. And out of nowhere, we both feel at the same time this chill in the back of our necks, and suddenly gets kind of cool in the bedroom. She suggests that we get under her blankets, which we do, and when we start talking about these really weird changes inside the house, the door, which I had previously closed with a weight in front of it, opens. And it was the worst. It didn't even open in a normal way, and it couldn't have because of the weight that I had previously set on the floor. But it was freaking slammed against the wall of the bedroom with a tremendous force, and it was very loud. At this point, I was shocked beyond belief, and my friend is legitimately having a panic attack and is crying about how she's way too scared at that moment, and that she doesn't want to die. I tell her that I'm gonna get up and close the door again, and also look outside in case her mom got to the house and is pranking us or something. She grabs my arm in terror, again saying that she doesn't want to be alone with the demon. And since I'm growing nervous because of the situation and her reactions, after all, we were teenagers back then, I grabbed something big that was in her bedroom and just started approaching the door with it for protection. And I told my friend that if anything was going to catch me or enter the room before closing the door, I was going to give it hell before it did anything to her, so she let my arm go. I go to the door and proceed to close it, but before doing so, I showed my head outside of it to see what was going on, and although I didn't see a single thing, I felt like I was in danger if I didn't close the door as soon as possible. I finally closed it and went to my friend to hug her, and reassured her that if anything came in, I was going to beat the hell out of it. I tried to talk to her about random stuff so she could calm down because really, she was completely sure we were going to die. And after what happened with the door, I became unsure as well. Minutes pass and things get calmer, and we talk normally, but always checking on the door. We finally hear her mom come back to the house, and I go outside the bedroom to meet her. She had finished buying and suddenly everything is normal. The house is not cool now, neither is my friend's bedroom. There are no more thunders or storm outside at all, so feeling safer, I go to investigate the house for things that could explain to me what happened. I went down to see if any wind could have opened the door, but as the mother told us, she closed absolutely everything. I entered the guest room to see if there was anything weird or something unusual was happening. Nope, found nothing at all that could explain the situation to me. And I know after all that, this may sound weird, but after inspecting everything I think I could have, I'm completely terrified. In the end, because of our fear, my friend and I decided it's better that I go home, and I just left almost immediately. When I arrived at my house, I see the time, and it was still early in the day. I thought I had been at my friend's for hours, when really it was just like half an hour. The event happened about 20 minutes after my friend's mom left, and in those 20 minutes, even the weather changed and came back to normal. And that was it. Up to this day, I still don't know what happened. Personal notes. Well, this is fascinating. It was very detailed. So one thing that could help to possibly explain this, or part of it, is a weather phenomena called a microburst. This is a very localized, sudden low-pressure system that can cause extreme wind, rain, and lightning to burst into existence, and usually doesn't last for very long, sometimes just minutes. Though typically, if they occur in specific geographic locations. This is caused by evaporation of water droplets from clouds and dry air. It causes a sudden temperature drop from evaporative cooling, like the gases in your fridge. I have heard before on some paranormal forums that sudden storms can be an omen of demonic activity. You certainly described a feeling of a strong presence. It could have been a coupling of strong sudden weather with the imaginative force of youth at play. I think our minds are maybe more open to, just unusual possibilities at a younger age. I certainly was when I was a teenager, although I'm fairly open now. The time perception slowdown is odd too. Although I think that may just be your mind at work. I don't know if there's like aliens involved. I definitely don't get that impression. Also, what about the house? Was there any sign of damage to it from the high winds? This is a question I asked the author, and they responded with, "The house was fine. When we investigated it, everything was just normal, like nothing had happened at all. Also, as I said in the story, we closed all the windows so nothing would fly around, like papers and little things, inside the house. And they had windows in every floor of the house. If something was damaged, which I doubt, we certainly didn't see it." Continuing my notes. This is a harder one to piece together. If I had to go with my gut, it's saying that it probably was a spirit. And it actually makes me question, what is a demon? Is it really like a spirit that goes to hell and is corrupted and then becomes a demon? Or is it a creation of the universe by, God or something? I don't know. It does seem like, in very rare occasions, there can be spirits that are just the echo of whoever they were is just faded away, and it's just raw emotion. Something wasn't sitting right in that moment. Case file number 6, written by user Gaza LPJ, describes an encounter with a UFO, feeling out of body during the encounter. Bicester, UK. I had a strange experience 12 years ago, where I had this fascination out of the blue with UFOs and feeling the need of sitting out and looking for them. I was only 14 at the time, and UFOs or aliens I had never thought about before. I couldn't have cared less at that age either. The next day, I forced some of my family to sit in the garden with me under the stars on an amazing clear evening. We were talking for about 10 minutes, then I noticed a strange white light, just like a spotlight that you would get in the kitchen. Bright but dull in color. As if it was attached to something. Like oval in shape, this is how I knew it was attached. This light slowly moved over the houses to the left of us, with no noise, and stopped right in front of us, probably 100 feet in the air, and probably 200 feet away. Now this is where it gets weird. I feel this strange feeling erupt in my chest, like an adrenaline rush, but it wasn't. I felt like I had lost the sense of time, and where I was almost as if I was unconscious. But at the same time, I was fixated on this light, but not actually there with my body. It's extremely hard to explain. All of a sudden the light brightens, and as best as I can describe, pings at a speed and acceleration I have never seen in my life. 0 to 200,000 miles per hour maybe. Seriously fast though, and still no noise. I lost track of it for a second, then something made me look up in the sky above, and I noticed the white light miles and miles up, as small as a star, and then zip into space, leaving a small trail of light behind it like a comet. My family had said nothing the whole time. We all looked at each other after, and no one could say anything. I think everyone was beyond frightened that an object like that exists. Anyone else seen anything similar? Case notes, file number 6. Okay, so that detail about the ship leaving behind a trail like a comet, that's so interesting. I mean, I've never even heard of that before. Normally they're very stealthy, I guess is the word. Besides the obvious spotlight that you see, but only when they're attempting to abduct someone. Usually that is just turned off. Maybe for some reason they forgot. And this bending of light as it traveled and maybe warped gravity somehow caused like a trail of light behind it? I don't know. As for your feeling of out of consciousness, out of body, I think describing it almost like a trance, a strong hypnotic state, is most accurate. Whatever effect that ship's energy had on you and your family, the feeling must have been frightening. If anyone hasn't seen Let Me Know's video, on UFO encounters by military personnel. I highly recommend it. The most prominent aspect to those videos is just how quickly and seemingly without consideration to conserving momentum, or G-forces for that matter, those ships are able to fly. Even if we somehow could make a ship go that fast and accelerate that quickly, every single person alive on that vessel would be turned into human pudding. G-forces are no joke. There's really nothing we have on Earth that could do that, so what you saw must not have been from this Earth. I wonder how many alien races there are, and I wonder how we're not able to detect them. But that's a tangent for another day. Case file number 7, written by user Shy Guy Gin, describes a sleep paralysis episode where the hallucination is seen by both him and his wife, a shadow person. Hello. So I don't normally write long posts, but this was just too weird and fresh not to write down. So a little backstory. I've dealt with sleep paralysis and EHS, which is exploding head syndrome, since I was a little kid. I won't delve too deeply into this, but it's not uncommon for me to either feel like the beginnings of SP, inability to move, feeling another presence, or wake up seeing shadow people. I've maybe had 3 experiences in the past couple years, so it's definitely become less frequent than when I was young. Honestly, it scared the hell out of me as a kid, and still does sometimes now, but I've grown almost used to it and figured it's in my mind and not real. However, a couple nights ago, my wife and I were visiting her family for Thanksgiving in Kansas. It's a tiny town of 1,500 people and very quiet. We were staying in the basement of an extended family member I hadn't met before, so I was already on edge being in a new place. Well, I woke up from a nightmare, the kind that sticks with you, and I woke up to the all too familiar feeling of being unable to move. I was able to move my head a bit, and upon waking I noticed a figure about the size of a taller, bulky dude. There was no noise, but I watched it steadily move across the room from one corner to the next. We were sharing the room with my sister-in-law and her boyfriend, so I just figured it was her SO leaving. They had to head out around 5 AM, so I thought nothing of it. What did strike me after a minute after seeing this was that I hadn't heard them leave. The house is pre-manufactured from the 70s. The basement ceiling is exposed and it is 100% impossible for anybody to walk up the stairs and exit the house without hearing it. So I figured he'd gone to the bathroom, which is in the direction that I saw the figure moving towards. By this time, I could move my body, and upon positioning myself so I could see the bathroom, it was clear that nobody was there. It was creepy, but what really did it for me was when my wife, whom was laying on her side facing towards the bathroom, saw the exact same thing. She said it went into the bathroom and never reappeared. So yeah, we're both a little freaked out. I'm naturally a skeptical person, and I've always felt comfort in knowing that my experiences were in my mind. But now, I'm starting to wonder if there isn't more to it all. While I feel like my nightmare and the presence may be related, I didn't necessarily feel like this thing was malicious. We stayed one more night in that house, and I forced myself to stay up until I saw morning light. Case notes, file number 7. So the obvious point that both you and your wife saw the same thing eliminates sleep paralysis hallucinations as a viable explanation. I wonder if there are beings out there that are between realities. There's so many accounts of crossovers, but what if some of them don't actually cross over? They're like stuck in limbo, caught between what we describe even as reality, and in our waking moments, our ability to perceive them increases, just as we come out of our dreamlike state. I wonder if you ask that extended family member if they've ever seen a shadowy figure too, which doesn't produce any sound while moving. If my theory is correct, they're likely limited to specific locations, or rather, if they're still fully conscious and trapped, maybe they believe the solution to returning home is in the same location where they became trapped to begin with. I don't know, this is really out there. I'm not sure if this is a thing at all. Case file number 8. Written by user McGilm72. Features a world on pause. Everything is quiet, ceases movement, besides her kids in her car. I want to share something that happened to me the other day. I don't know if you would describe it as a glitch, but it was just so bizarre I had to come share it. Firstly, I need to give you context to help you understand. I live in Australia. Right now it's coming into summer, the hot weather is coming around where I live, and the cicadas have come out. They are deafening during the day. Anyway, it was midday and I was driving in my car with my 2 kids, ages 12 and 10. We were driving along a busy-ish road. There were 2 lanes going in each direction. We pulled up to the traffic lights at the crossroads junction. I was a bit back from the lights as it was busy, and I could see the other cars on each side of the junction. Suddenly it went completely quiet, and I mean deadly quiet. There were no car engine noises, no birds, no cicadas, no wind blowing through the trees, absolutely nothing. I looked at the cars in front, at either side of the junction, and none of them were moving. Usually if one set of lights is red, another is green, but despite traffic being at all sets of lights, no one was moving. I looked at my kids. They seemed to have noticed it too, as they both looked confused, but funnily none of us spoke. Then maybe a minute or more later, everything started again. Cars moved, you could hear their engines, and the cicadas started as well. My 12-year-old daughter, who was sitting in the passenger seat beside, finally broke the silence in the car by saying, "Well, that was weird." When I looked at her, I nodded. She said it was like the world was paused and muted. I agreed, and we talked about it the whole way home. This morning while driving them to school, my daughter commented on how she didn't understand what had happened. I'm at a loss for explanation too. I cannot stress how quiet it was. Complete and utter silence. And on a side note, I have tinnitus 24/7, damage from chemotherapy, and I noticed that it was also gone during this event. If my kids hadn't been there with me and commented on it first, I would have just thought it was me and my ears playing up, but they both heard it too, and yes, they have no hearing problems. Case notes, file number 8. My first question was going to be if you hear anything in dead silence. I too have a level of tinnitus, but if this was paused too, that's just really strange. For me it's 24/7, and like you said, for you as well. It absolutely never pauses, even for a split second. Always there, it's literally a processing issue in our brains that causes it, a sort of overload. What comes to mind for me is like a pause state in a video game. Perhaps there was an issue upcoming in your specific location which had to be patched in real time, but a pause was needed for the simulation to continue running smoothly after the update was programmed in. Honestly, I'm 90% convinced that's where these sudden and seemingly random time freezes are coming from. Though it's very curious that both you and your kids were all consciously aware of this. It leads me to think that, indeed, we're not NPCs in the world, but participants plugged in. That is to say, the simulation can be paused, but our perception of it as an interface isn't. We aren't the program, only the ones chugging through it. McGilm72 responded to this comment, saying, "My tinnitus is usually 24/7, even in normal silence I still hear the high-pitched ringing in my ears. In fact, in quiet times, the ringing is louder. It's so bad that at night to go to sleep I have to use some background noise to soften the ringing so I can sleep. I've never experienced a moment without tinnitus ringing in over 2 years, and if it hadn't been for my children being there and witnessing it too, I might have just put it down to something wrong with my ears. As time passes, the memory of it feels like it's fading, almost like a dream. It's very frustrating, and I can't remember exactly why I was even on that road. Then I asked my kids if they remember why we were there, and they can't. I was heading back towards our home, like we had been somewhere and was returning home, but I can't figure out what it was. I've looked at my texts and even my camera roll to try to jog my memory of what I was even doing there, but I can't. I remember the actual event clearly, but the whole day before and after is now gone." Continuing my notes, Yeah, that adds more details. The fact that you don't even remember why you were there, what you were doing before. So maybe you were lured there for some reason. Maybe the update, if that's what it was, required you to be in a specific location for it to work. Huh, how peculiar. Case file number 9, written by user Jonathan Wright 101, illustrates the power of our mind and connections between those we love, even our pets. My Shih Tzu, Jack Bauer, and I have been tied for a while. I got him 10 years ago, and since I've added a wife, another dog, a cat, and 4 kids. However, my Shih Tzu and I are main homies. He knows who my favorite is. We have this weird relationship where I can sense what he wants before he barks or even looks at me. The wife gets weirded out by it, but I think that's just jealousy of our connection. The other day, however, Jack Bauer and I took things to a new level. This was off the wall. Bauer was passed out on his back on the couch besides my daughter, who was doing her homework. I went into the kitchen to do the dishes. About 20 minutes later, as I was finishing up, I see Bauer right beside me staring at me. I give him a few pets on his noggin. I know that look. He wants water. So I pour him a cool drink. Yet as I drop the water bowl, Bauer is nowhere in sight. This is weird. Bauer never leaves me until he gets what he wants, and he wants water. I start looking around for him, and lo and behold, he's passed out on his back on the couch, in his favorite position besides my daughter. I asked her if he's moved, and as I do, he snores, byproduct of having no snout. My daughter doesn't know what I'm talking about. He hasn't moved, and regardless, he's too old and fat to get up and down the couch without help anyway. It does get weirder. Well, I figured I know my dog because we have that connection and all, so I should wake him up and see if he's thirsty. I take him to the water bowl, and lo and behold, he was parched. He drank the whole bowl of water, and then grabbed a snack. The only rational conclusion I can think of is that Astral Bauer let me know that Material Bauer was thirsty. Case notes, file number 9. Right, so first off, excellent name. Though not entirely fitting given that you describe this force that is Mr. Bauer as being fat and lazy. But hey, with a name like that, why bother being fit? So, per the event, it makes me wonder how astral projection works, or if this is more of a foresight ability. But also, how are these triggered? I've given it a lot of thought, and the very nature of the universe has inherent uncertainty and randomness. Hell, we can barely predict the weather beyond 3 days because of chaos theory. Now in your case, the predictive vision was only a few seconds ahead of time, and it was more about the emotional and physical state of Mr. Bauer than it was the precise detailing of the future. So I think it makes a certain level of sense that this could be possible, especially with other sentient beings that we share a potent connection with. It's like the tendrils of our mind can ripple off into the future, and somehow we're able to glean from them something that might happen later, or a possible state of the future. Something like that. Case file number 10, written by Suspicious Client 890, is a story of perhaps foolishly using a Ouija board as teenagers, resulting in several near-death experiences. The cause, or just a warning. If you want to mess with a Ouija board, don't do it. You will regret it so badly. Here's a bit of backstory. Me and my friends were having a slumber party. Let's call my friends Owen, Ryan, and Kylie. My name is Mavis. It was at Ryan's house. It was 10 at night. We were all bored, so Owen asked Ryan if he has a Ouija board. Ryan said yes. We were all 16, so being young, naive teens who were bored as hell, we all agreed to do it. We researched the rules and played. We took it very seriously. I asked the first question. I asked as a joke, "When will I die?" It spelled tomorrow. Owen was a prankster who kept moving the glass piece as a joke. It spelled the word tomorrow. I accused Owen of moving it. He swore up, down, left, and right that it wasn't him. We got scared, so we said goodbye. The next day, I had a lot of near-death experiences. I had my driver's license and I had a car, so I was driving to school and a deer came out of nowhere. I missed it but swerved into a ditch. I have a chandelier in my house. It fell and nearly killed me. I also nearly got hit by a car. Then the next day, everything was back to normal. I don't think it's a coincidence. Whenever I tell anyone about it, no one believes me. The Ouija board's prediction was almost correct. I think the demon tried to kill me. Feel free to ask any questions you may have. Case Notes, File Number 10. I'm ever the optimist when it comes to spirits, or entities beyond the common perception. My gut, deep down, tells me that this entity wasn't trying to kill you. It was trying to protect you, to warn you. I'm not sure it did anything physically to prevent those accidents from occurring. Rather, I think that by giving you this warning a day in advance, it caused you to be hyper-aware and more cautious, leading to your final destination-style experiences without the grisly ending. Of course, this would beg the question of how a spirit could see the future. Maybe time itself bleeds away for these echoes or imprints of former people, which is what I think ghosts are. Case file number 11, written by user Audrey Brooke. She saw what can only be described as a ghost, soon after also witnessing the creepiest man accompanied by a crow, an omen of death. A few years ago, when I was 16 or 17, I worked in a restaurant as a waitress. There were two locations, one in my town, which I'll call Restaurant A, and one in a town about 30 minutes away, Restaurant B. I should mention that Restaurant B is located in a rougher area, and many of my coworkers weren't from the best of backgrounds. Nonetheless, they were sweet people and I trusted them. I was trusted as the manager on Thursdays at Restaurant B, which usually meant that I was the cashier, server, manager, and the only other person would be a cook, which I'll call Dave. In the restaurant, there's a front glass door that customers use, and a back wood door, no window in the door, we used to take out the trash and such. One day, we had no business and I was in the kitchen with Dave and another cook that was about to leave. We're just standing around talking, with Dave right in front of the back door, the other cook to the side of the door, and me about 5 feet away from Dave in line with the door. He had a bag of trash in his hand. He was going to take it out. He opened the door while still facing me and talking, and behind the door was a person. It was clearly a person in a gray t-shirt, jeans, and a black hat. But I only saw him for a split second, long enough to know someone was there. Then Dave saw my face and turned around, which blocked my view, and the guy was gone. The other cook saw my face turn white as a sheet when Dave had opened the door, and joked that I looked like I had just seen a ghost. Oh, the irony. While Dave started looking around outside to see what I could have seen, I started actually panicking. I have severe anxiety and panic disorder, and Dave was just trying to calm me down, but he also seemed really freaked out. He asked me what I had seen. I told him I saw someone. I described the person, and what Dave told me next will never leave me. Dave just up and started crying, and ran to the door with his phone in his hand. He was outside for nearly half an hour, and when he came back in, he was calmer but still nervous. He told me that roughly 10 years ago, he and his friend were in a horrible car accident which ended in his friend dying. He told me the person I had described, standing outside the door, was wearing the exact outfit his friend had died in. And apparently, I wasn't the first person to see the ghost of his friend. Dave told me that whenever something were to happen to anyone in his family, his friend would show up to either him or his family. For example, one time he saw the ghost of his friend and literally a minute later his phone rang and he found out his father had just suffered a massive heart attack. When he had went out of the door, he was calling his family to make sure everyone was okay. Luckily they were. But not even 2 days later, he found out his wife had miscarried. As if that wasn't weird enough, the same night I saw the ghost, something else weird had happened that I believe was paranormal, but I also understand could have been just my paranoia. I was up front at the register, still shaken up, and a huge crow was hovering outside the front door. It was just so weird, it literally was just flying in place. It suddenly flew away, and then a really strange looking man approached the door and opened it wide, but didn't enter. He had the creepiest smile on his face the entire time. Moments later, the crow was back and it almost came in the restaurant, but another customer swatted it away. The man literally turned around and left, didn't order anything, and didn't say a word. I know it just sounds unbelievable, but I'm hoping someone reads this and understands what I went through was real, because everyone I know doesn't believe in the paranormal and thinks I was just imagining things. Case Notes, File Number 11. It does sound like an omen of death, doesn't it? Almost like your coworker's friend who had died 10 years ago knows about death's presence, and just prior to death claiming his prize, Dave's friend attempts to give him a warning without being able to verbalize it. All he can do is appear and hope that Dave recognizes the pattern, which clearly he does. The strange man you saw accompanied by the crow, representing death. I wonder if it's like the literal physical incarnation of death itself, like in the show Supernatural, or perhaps it was just you envisioning it because of what happened that night. Maybe it was your paranoia for that part of the story. Either way, Dave's friend is clearly looking out for him, but it sounds like Dave's soul is almost cursed. Case File Number 12. Written by user Popular Cartoonist 3. He was texting with his brother on Facebook when suddenly, his brother entered an altered state of mind, almost like a possession. His brother doesn't remember the event. So, where to begin? Well, I'm male, from Denmark, 29 years old, and have 5 siblings. One of them is my half-little brother. We have a good relationship and are very good friends. He's 9 years younger than me. I believe in the paranormal and he doesn't, yet we both believe in alternate universes, and I strongly believe in glitches. Because of this, I always hoped something odd would happen to me. It'd be cool, right? Well, not really. Anyway, this is what happened. It was some time ago from now. We were texting on Facebook as we've done many times in the past. I was at the local shop on my way home. I just got a new song on my phone and I wrote to him. Yo bro, just got a new song on my phone. One we haven't heard in years. He answered. Cool, which one? I replied. Diesel, Chill Pill. Non-live version. I added the non-live detail because I've only listened to the song live prior. Here's where it gets weird. My message was never received on his end. Instead, he wrote back a lot of unusual stuff. I got pictures and proof. It was as if he was reading from a satanic Bible. He then wrote, "Life is a shared narrative that we all agreed to believe." That shook me up. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what the hell he was talking about, which I tried to tell him. He didn't care. But here is the eeriest part. He then sent me 5 or 6 voice recordings where he screams, laughs, cries. He's freaking out and is hysterical, all about 5 seconds long. I asked my wife about the recordings and she thought that it was my brother pranking me. I thought so too. I called him and told him to stop pranking me. He didn't know what I was talking about. I told him about the messages and voice recordings. He said, "Dude, bro, I didn't do any of that. What the hell are you talking about?" My wife and I played the voices for him. He went quiet for a bit. He was freaking out too. I've never heard him like that before. He does like to prank people, me most, and type weird stuff to people just to freak them out. But this, he didn't do. He vehemently swore on it. I sent a screenshot to show him our conversation, and he couldn't believe it. He sent a screenshot to me as well, showing none of the messages were received on his side. He said he never sent the recordings either, let alone made them. The brother on the recordings was in pain and needed help. We could all hear it, but I couldn't do anything. So what was this? A glitch? My future brother trying to reach out to me? What? Case notes, file number 12. Okay, so the first question in the recordings, did it sound like your brother's voice? You're sure it isn't someone else who somehow sent those messages through his Facebook account? My thoughts are either somehow you're being pranked expertly by your brother, or someone connected through his account to as well prank you, or just try to scare you, though that would be odd, wouldn't it? Also, is your brother sober, no drugs or depression? Just trying to exhaust the normal explanations. The author's response. Exactly. He's not pranking me, and yes, it is his voice, though he says it isn't. He's always been sober, there's no drugs or drinking or depression. It does seem like we do live in a simulation though. He does love pranking, of course, but not like that and definitely not on Facebook. This is just not something he would do. Continuing my thoughts. So reading about that message he sent, the specific one with the single line, that life is a narrative we all choose to play. It kind of touches on the notion I've had that life is indeed a simulation, but more than that, it's a sort of MMORPG we all agreed to sign up for, so that our memories of the real world would be masked while playing, something like that, but we all choose to sign up for it. Like you could imagine it now, go back to a movie like Total Recall, where they implant memories, but it's so vivid and real it's like you're playing a game. You could actually consider that happening in this own fictional reality if it is a simulation. If our computing becomes powerful enough, we could simulate a less complex universe and then plug our brains into it. Although masking our memories of the real world, that's something I don't know if we could do yet, but maybe we could in the future. So who's to say it hasn't already happened? We're all players in a grand immersive game. But for some people, for whatever reason, they're able to perceive or connect more with the real world and the real version of themselves, which gives them extra information. Perhaps a subconscious glitch in the software code. I don't know, but it is interesting. Case file number 13, written by user Valkyr J. Having taken her glasses off to apply makeup, she sees outside of her car crystal clear before realizing her glasses are still off. The instant she realizes, her vision returns to its blurry state. For a bit of context, my eyesight is horrible. Even half a foot in front of my face, I see nothing but blurry colors. Yesterday, my mom and brother picked me up to go to an appointment. I was running a little late, so I didn't have time to put my contacts in or do my makeup. So while my mom was driving, I was in the passenger seat, with the mirror down. I took off my glasses to apply my eyeshadow. My brother, who was sitting behind me, asked me a question. I turned to look back at him. When I turned my head back around, I quickly finished my eyeshadow and shut the mirror. I was looking out the window at the farmland just off the road and thinking, wow, how beautiful it was, when suddenly I realized that I hadn't put my glasses back on. They were still sitting on the dashboard. As soon as I had this realization, my perfect vision went back to being just blurred colors. It was instantaneous, like flipping a switch on my sight. It was so shocking that I yelled, "Holy crap!" My outburst startled my mom and brother, so I told them what just happened. They said they believed me but couldn't think of a rational reason for it. We tried to figure it out for the rest of the drive, but honestly, we couldn't. To be honest, if there's some secret to magically fixing my eyesight that I accidentally stumbled upon, then I wish I could find it again. But I don't know what it was. Case notes, file number 13. This is incredible, really. I mean, it underpins the nature of our reality, right? The brain is incredibly powerful. Unimaginably so, but also very, focused, and especially as we get older, it can become more rigid. Perhaps in those moments of absent wandering of your mind, just admiring the view, your brain was processing visual information in a new way. But as your brain, or you, became consciously aware of this, it corrected what it perceived as an error. Our eyes collect light data from the world around us and relay it to our brain for processing. The issue with nearsightedness is the shape of the cornea, but the brain, it takes this information in a different way because of how light is bent with glasses on versus off. It'd be like your brain was processing information and converting the light data to how it would be with your glasses on. I don't know what could cause this, why your subconscious mind would decide to do this. I mean, I guess it is just interpreting data. Very odd, but incredibly cool. Case file number 14, written by user Todd XXX123, describes a few recent events where his wife appears to be interacting subtly with the world, proving a part of her remains with him and their son. My wife suddenly passed away on June 2nd, 2020, from a massive heart attack. Nobody ever asks themselves, what would I do if my significant other was not here tomorrow? I wish I would have asked myself that question. Maybe I would have been more prepared. Anyways, 2 days after she died, I was on my way to do something, and at the last minute I remembered I forgot my phone. I went back into the house through the hallway and entered my room, got my phone, crossed back into the hallway where I froze in my tracks. I smelled my wife's perfume, as if she was standing right next to me. I forgot to mention earlier that I knew my wife for 31 years. We'd been married for 23 years. So that was the first strange thing. Next, about a week and a half ago, I went and collected my wife's ashes. Back home, I placed them on the coffee table in the living room. That same day, I had someone answer an ad that I had placed on the OfferUp app. I was selling a lamp and I accepted the person's offer. The guy showed up at about 5:30 p.m. and bought the lamp. While he was here, he asked if I was selling anything else and I replied, yes, I have a chandelier hanging up in the back of the garage that's for sale as well. I got it down while telling him that I also have a gas-powered skateboard for sale. It's in the house all boxed up because it's currently listed on eBay. Well, he ended up passing on both items. A few hours later, I received a notification on my Instagram page that someone had liked a few of my posts. The person had liked 2 pictures I posted, which is not altogether uncommon. I didn't even bother looking at it. The next morning when I woke up, I checked that Instagram notification. The 2 pictures that had been liked were of my skateboard and of the chandelier. Now those 2 posts were uploaded very far apart. You have to scroll down on the page about 200 pictures to get to the chandelier. The name of the account that left the likes on those photos was Carrie Mill, which is my wife's maiden name. I clicked on the account, and one of the people that follow her was her niece. Another person that follows her was a manager at an apartment building that we used to live in. That's weird, right? So I searched some of my wife's old paperwork looking for the password to her Instagram account. After a while, I found it. Logging into her account, went to her settings and looked at the login activity. The only time that her account had been accessed was from our IP address. What the hell? The next odd thing happened last night at about 3 a.m. Here I am sitting at my computer in my room, and the dog comes in, stops at the foot of the bed, looks up like she's getting ready to jump up, but she doesn't. Instead, she just sits there, staring up at nothing and starts wagging her tail and twisting her head back and forth like someone is scratching behind her ears. This goes on for about a minute or so. The last thing. Today my son was filling out an application for a student grant for school on his phone. When he was done, he scrolled to the bottom of the page to make sure he didn't miss anything. At the bottom of the app, it says either how many people have used this app before or when it was last used. Well, at the bottom of the app, it said it was last used on December 31st, 1969. This was my wife's birthday. I wish I was making this up, but I'm genuinely not. I just want to thank everyone for their comments and support. It really has helped me tremendously. I even want to thank the ones that don't believe this story or are skeptical of it. Just thanks for reading. Case notes. File number 14. It's that sudden passing, revealed in your first line, that explains all of this, or most of it. If someone passes away in a moment where they can't place any of their affairs in order, they simply can't leave, cross over completely to another reality, their remnant essence sticks around, endures, it persists in a way to help or comfort, or just to be with those that they loved. It's like trying to separate water from salt. It takes tremendous energy and time. Your wife, at least a part of her, is still with you, and your son. She wants the best for you both. But don't be sad. I firmly believe that when we die, the bulk of our essence, our consciousness, does transmit to other versions of ourselves, usually identical in the nearly infinite alternate universes out there. Your wife's echo is still in this reality with you, but her full self is also there, still living life in a different universe, probably telling her son that that gas-powered skateboard is just too dangerous to play on. Case file number 15. Written by user Casper Sorensen. Witness many shadow people or spirits, humans appearing in a disused building where they shouldn't be living, making strange movements and gestures. So this happened a long time ago, when I was about 7 or 8. My grandmother had died, and my family decided to throw a fundraiser, which was more like a party to raise money for a cancer charity. The event was held in a part of the hospital grounds which were formerly the living quarters of nurses, /social club, /laundromat, and a home for people suffering from dementia. As I recall, only the social club and laundromat were still operational at that time, and as my mom was a nurse at the hospital, as was also my recently deceased grandmother, it only seemed fitting to hold the event there. I must confess, I did not really comprehend what the event was for, and so I, with my childhood friends and cousins, just saw this as an opportunity to play outside the building, just like kids do. I and my cousins found an open door that led into what we thought was a disused building, but we entered a room and found around 7 or 8 elderly people sitting in the room. When I cast my mind back to this, I can't distinguish whether this part was a dream or not, but I am almost certain it was real. They were sitting there smiling. I don't remember if they said anything, but it freaked us out and we ran out of the building. What is so peculiar is that the building was disused. It was even in a state of decay, so there's just no way elderly people would be living there. I remember us peeking through a window and seeing them walking around with their frames, and it honestly seemed like the most realistic experience. They were there. We ran back to our parents and I was like, "There are old people in there." And my mom laughed and dismissed what I was saying. But I'm so convinced it was real. I've even spoken to my cousins and they remember it happening too. When it got dark, we were messing around outside, playing tag and manhunt, etc. I remember my cousin pointing to the window. There were around 3 or 4 shadowy figures in the window. These figures started appearing in other windows too. We could see them peeking out of windows of other buildings. We would walk up to the window, see one in there, and just run around screaming. Most of the kids found it funny, but I found it absolutely terrifying. Seeing them filled me with fear. Even the old people who are stereotypically the embodiment of kindness and warmth scared me. I didn't get good vibes at all. When the party had finished and we drove off, I turned and looked through the window and saw a shadowy figure again, who seemed to be gesturing at me, even though the rooms I saw them in were dark. I could still see them. It's driving me insane trying to figure it out. Case notes, file number 15. Do you know why I think you felt uncomfortable? The vibe was almost ominous for you. I think these are the remnants, the out-of-phase essence of many old people who were suffering from dementia all those years or decades ago. Think of a standard spirit, but then add on the fact of passing away without having, well, all your marbles in order. I mean, if a spirit was previously suffering from dementia, I think that would translate over to their echo because it's just an imprint of who they were at the time when they passed. It really is sad to think of. I think this would explain the strange movements and gestures you were seeing. They were just a result of this. I doubt it was malice. I think they didn't clearly understand what they were, or even who they were, before they died. Case file number 16, written by user Purple Lily 18, is a story about her niece, so young, being diagnosed with a tumor on her pineal gland. This is sad, but her abilities, on the other hand, were truly remarkable. This is my first post to Reddit, so please be kind. It's a sensitive subject for me. I thought this story might interest some of you, since I'm still blown away by the details. My niece was diagnosed with a tumor of the pineal gland at the age of 3. As you can imagine, this was heartbreaking, and it rocked my family's world apart. But I want to share some of the unique details of her story. Keep in mind the pineal gland is also known as a third eye. When my niece was just 5 months old, I moved in with my sister. Right before her diagnosis, at 3 years old, we noticed crazy things happening. For almost a year prior, we tried to find out what was wrong with my niece. Many symptoms just did not seem right until eventually they all boiled over. Before we got to that point, some very unique things happened. First, we were getting ready to go to a family event for the day. My niece was extremely sick, which wasn't unusual, nauseous and lethargic. It was around this time we began to realize that something was wrong with her. As we were loading up the car, my sister was in the driver's seat, and I was helping my niece buckle up in the back seat. I buckled her, then went to close the door, and as I did, I heard a voice say very loudly, "Don't take her, she's too sick." At that time, we all three said, "What did you say?" My sister and I heard the same thing, and we thought that each other had said it. We pulled away, not knowing what to think. She fell asleep through most of that day. This was the first time our parents mentioned that something must be very wrong with her, as a 3-year-old will not sleep most of the day while around family and friends. Within that same week, my sister was in the shower and began angrily yelling my name and asking me, "Why would you say that?" I told her I was in the living room and didn't say or hear anything. She told me she heard a voice say 3 times, "Your child is going to die." Fast forward a few days at bedtime. My niece starts crying on multiple occasions and tells us she doesn't want to die. We had no idea where she got this from or why she was saying this, but it was enough to freak us out. The next 2 weeks were a rapid blur, and finally, we got a shocking diagnosis. At this time and the following 2 relapses, she would present psychic tendencies. We always knew the cancer was back because of this. She would tell us who was calling. She would tell me Mommy's home before she pulled in the driveway. She knew of an extended family member's cancer diagnosis even before she shared the news with us. She also piped up one day in the car as I discussed the lack of a Dunkin' Donuts on the way to my night classes. She said, "Have you tried the intersection of blank and blank road?" When I asked her where she got that from, she just said, "I don't know, I heard it in my head." Sure enough, there was a Dunkin' Donuts exactly where she said it would be. Another time at a family function, she walked around singing happy birthday, and we all laughed thinking what a happy 4-year-old she was. I kept telling her we were just having a barbecue, there was no birthday. Then my mom announced later that it just so happened to be my deceased grandmother's birthday. One of the last premonitions, for lack of a better word, that we shared was her telling me that I would have baby girls, but that she wouldn't be here to see them. She was right. I had 3, and she is their guardian angel. There were many other religious or spiritual things she told me, and I feel blessed that, through her, I was able to get a glimpse of heaven. She was a wonderful girl who loved God. My sister was 25 when she had her, and I was 21. We were not living a spiritual life, you could say. But this child requested that we read her the Bible at the age of 3. She was something special. And I've been told she now acts as a greeter of heaven, and she's very busy. Thank you so much for listening. Case Notes, File Number 16. Wow, that was a hard one to narrate. Very emotional. Your niece was a unique soul. I'm just so sorry to hear about her passing so young. It's just heart-wrenching. But she left a remarkable impression in your heart, and now, because you shared the story with us, in our hearts too. So I'm wondering about her ability. I've heard about brain tumors causing extraordinary premonition powers, but it's rarely so clear and precise as your niece was able to present. She also seemed extremely smart for her age, as per your example. clearly understanding you were searching for a Dunkin' Donuts and then directing you to the proper area to find one? Or is it that the pineal gland controls access to the universe's, let's say its code, allowing for absorption of information that seems practically mystical in ability? That could be the case, and it would kind of fit the theme going here. I just want to offer my condolences again for your loss. Thanks for sharing her story with us. And that concludes tonight's case files. If you found the experiences interesting and my narration enjoyable, then consider leaving a like and also subscribing. I upload Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 p.m. EST with new case files all the time. I'll see you there.